talk about his art. We'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A at the end of the event, and then we'll close this out. So a brief, I see a lot of familiar faces here, but just if you're new, welcome. The Museum of the Palestinian People is a brick and mortar place in DC, up just north of DuPont Circle. We've been there since last summer. Previously, the museum was a traveling exhibit founded by Bashar al-Nasser, who was a Palestinian American who is part of the Attentive Nations family from Bethlehem, and who, when he came to school in the area, saw that there were no Palestinian cultural centers or museums in DC. And so he wanted to change that, and thus the museum was born. We do tours currently every Saturday, but unfortunately with the pandemic, we've moved a lot of our events online, which maybe it's not so unfortunate because we've been able to have a lot of engagement with people in our community and outside of it, people around the nation and the world who otherwise might not have known about the museum or been able to participate in our events. So thank you, whether you're in the DMV, that is to say the DC area, or outside, thank you so much for joining us. So just last week, we introduced our new art exhibit called Intersections, Palestinian and African American Art for Social Justice. Palestinian artists around the world continue to create art that expose injustices and voices both the yearning and the demand for a more just and equitable world. They find common ground with African American artists whose own calls for justice, that they may reflect separate historical experiences, provide vivid depictions of the quest for equal rights in a challenging and frequently hostile political environment. We were lucky enough to have 14 or 15 artists featured in this exhibit, and today we are especially lucky to hear from Malek and Taki, again, two of our featured artists, as we learn about their stories, and they introduce us to their artwork, their creative process, and how they see art as protest. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce both the exhibit and Malek Mata, our first speaker. So bear with me as I share my screen. So for those of you who have not been to the museum virtual tour yet, this is, if you were to navigate to the tour, this is what you'd find. We're going to be jumping between our 360 tour and then close-ups of the actual artwork when our artists speak of them, speak about the individual pieces. So I'd like to introduce Malek Mata. Malek Mata, a 20-year-old woman artist from the Gaza Strip, Palestine, currently attends Istanbul Ayudin University in Istanbul, Turkey. She started painting in 2014 at 13 years of age during the 51-day Israeli military assault on Gaza. Forced to stay inside for her own safety, she felt a compelling need to release all of her negative energy, fear, anxiety, and sheer terror. In the first 2 years, Malek produced over 200 paintings. Unable to leave Gaza due to restrictions of the Israeli occupation, Malek showed her paintings to the world via social media, on Instagram and Facebook. Her first international exhibition was in Bristol, United Kingdom, in 2017. Since then, her artwork has been featured in individual and group exhibitions in Jerusalem, France, Spain, Costa Rica, India, and in the Art Under Siege exhibit in the Rayburn House Office building of the US House of Representatives here in Washington. She also had a solo exhibition in Germany and spoke about and shared her artwork at 12 universities in the US. So without further ado, Malek, I'd like to turn the mic over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm very, very excited to be here with you today. When I first heard about the theme of the talk, I was very excited because it's mainly what I focused on my artwork since I started. I'd like to speak a little bit about why I choose to paint about social justice since I started painting. So as Abby said, I started painting during the last war, which was in 2014. And painting for me was a way to discharge the negativity that I had back then, the fear of losing life. Also, it was not my first experience, it was the third experience. So dealing with complex PTSD, dealing with a long time of terrified moments that you could lose your life any time, your family could die anytime. So I said to myself that I need to do something just to distract myself. So I had this watercolor material that I received from my school at UNRWA. And I said, like, I will just do what I like, just to distract myself, as I said. And I started drawing. And since then, I really believed that I felt better. And knowing more about art, I learned that there's something called art therapy. And this is what really happened with me. So I started my first artwork was more like self-expression. So since then, I started posting my artwork online. And I decided that I will have to deliver what my people is going through. For me, as my life in Gaza, it's under siege. I lived with a few hours of electricity every day, if I was fortunate, and I also um, really was pressured as any Gazan living under occupation, under siege, and under political conflicts. So I decided that I'm gonna paint about how it is to be Palestinian in the Gaza Strip. And since that, I painted about electricity shortage, about Palestinians who lost their lives, who were in duty, like Razan al-Najjar, who was young medic. She was my age. She was killed while she was helping injured people in the Great March of Return. And also painted about Yasser Mortaja, who was a photographer who lost his life, and a student that my mom had, she lost all her family, 17 members, and she was the only one to survive. So living in this atmosphere and in this environment, it really encouraged me to use my art as a way to deliver my struggle and my people's struggle as Palestinian. I am one of the 2 million Gazans living in Gaza, but I wanted to share the stories for our mutual struggle to the outside world to know about our lives and to know that we are not political um, people. We are people who like to live, who like to dream, who like to paint and to enjoy life. Recently, I painted Iyad al-Hallaq, who was Palestinian artist who who had autism, and he was killed with around 7 bullets in his body, and he was killed with cold blood. So I wrote with that uh, the saying that his mom said, Iyad was the flower of our family, and they cut him down very early. So I painted his mom, she holding the flower and the cactus. That it's for me, cactus is not a very pleasant like kind of plants, but I shared it to share the pain of Palestinian and how his loss was really painful. So I also painted about Ahmed Ariqat when he was killed when he wanted to get his sister and his mom for his sister wedding. So it's really a disaster what happened. So I decided to paint the fiance of Ahmed Ariqat, who was planning for their lives, starting their lives shortly after his sister wedding. So I wrote Adala with different languages to show that justice is not inclusive for certain people or nationalities. It should be universal because we are all human beings living in one universe. So also, I was very, very touched and moved by the murder of George Floyd. That we all was very shocked by his murder by by a cop. He killed him with his knees. So I felt when I watched the full 10 minutes, 9 minutes, and I couldn't really sleep thinking of how George Floyd was bleeding for his life, was begging, and I can't help but remember the struggle. I know some people disagree with the comparison, and I'm not trying to compare, but for me as a Palestinian who witnessed similar actions, I couldn't help but connect with the struggle of Black American living in the US and the struggle they are facing, like oppression, racism. So I painted this portrayed, it went really viral. And it's very important for me as a Palestinian to show solidarity with other people in the world, to show that we love humanity, and we want to live in peace, and we are not terrorists as what people think. How much my art has it changed? Well, I really like to think that my artwork would make a change. And I witnessed like some people. 6 years ago, I met someone online, and they were Israel supporter, and it's like a short story. So like their comments were really negative. They thought of us as terrorists, as occupiers, as corruptors. So as of 14 years old, I wasn't able to communicate that much, knowing that English, I was not great at English. So with time, they were following my artwork, and they were watching the stories I was posting with my artwork. And they told me, Malak, like, we stand for your people, we support you, and we support Palestine. So this is how art can really change and can really make people think differently and from different perspective. If I talk with you about a political view, from a political view about Palestine, you will start thinking, analyzing, considering. So what if I show you a political painting with a humanitarian message? It will not only make you think, but will also make you feel, which is very powerful and a perfect way for us to connect as a human being. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was really powerful, and I have a lot of questions, but we'll save that for the Q&A. And so at this point, I'd like to introduce our next featured artist, Taki Spatin. I'll read his short bio and then hand the mic over to him. Taki Spatin is a Bethlehem-based Palestinian contemporary and conceptual artist, born in 1988, who studied at the International Academy of Art in Ramallah. Spatin is a well-known painter and graffiti artist in Palestine, with a number of murals strewn across the length of Israel's separation wall. Walking along the length of the wall in Bethlehem, Spatin's name can be seen in a handful of murals scribbled in the corner of all of his paintings. So with that, I'd like to turn the mic over to Taki and also his assistant, Sala, who will be helping translate for him today.
Hello guys, Taki is going to be speaking and I'll be translating every once in a while when he gives me the mic too.
أول شيء أنا اخترت إنه يكون معي حدا إنجليزي وأنا عربي لأنه في بعض المشاهدين عرب ما بيفهموا إنجليزي فالشيء المهم للجهتين.
So Taki chose to have a translator because he realizes that there are Arab audience and there are English-speaking audience. And he would like to reach both equally with the full capacity of the language.
أول شيء شكرا للجميع وشكرا للقائمين على هذا المعرض الجميل ولاهتمام الشريحة الفنية الثقافية الموجودة في أمريكا بالفن الفلسطيني وفي كل شيء بيطلع من فلسطين خصوصا في الآونة الأخيرة الصعبة.
First of all, he would like to thank you all guys for the support of the Palestinian art and all the Palestinian topics that could reach the world right now, especially in such a time where the world actually is in total suffering all of this neglect and all of this pandemic.
وجود مثل هذه المنصات يعني سهل كثيرا إيصال الفكرة والشعور الموجود عندي أو عند أي فنان إلى العالم بأخذ العين بالاعتبار بالظروف اللي إحنا بنعيشها في فلسطين وصعوبة اللي هو التنقل ويعني صعوبة العيش كما يعني نعرف جميعا.
Such a stage is very important for him as a Palestinian, because simply speaking, with all what we are going through, especially internationally right now, from the closure and blockades and quarantine, and especially for him as a Palestinian with the general difficulty of traveling and reaching out and going everywhere in the world to give his voice and to reach his voice to the people in general. So that's why he believed that such a stage is an important stage for us Palestinians.
ورغم الظروف الصعبة يعني نحاول أن نكون بالخير أنا والشعب الفلسطيني وجميع الفنانين الفلسطينيين.
And despite all the hardships that we are facing, me and all Palestinians, we're trying to live a life to the best.
بدي أبلش أول أحكي عن اللي هو مسيرتي الفنية هي طويلة جدا لكن سوف أحاول الاختصار يعني قدر الإمكان عن الموضوع. درست في رام الله، اترعرعت في قرية حوسان اللي هي في بيت لحم.
So I first would like to talk about my art journey, which is very long. So I will try to brief talk about it. I started my studies, as you said earlier, in Ramallah, and I live and grew up in a village near Bethlehem called Husan.
رسمت أول إشي الأرض، رسمت التاريخ الفلسطيني، رسمت قداسة فلسطين وأرضها وزيتونها.
I painted first the land, the history, the holiness of Palestine and the holiness of our story.
فوجدت إنه فلسطين يعني مرتبطة ارتباط شديد بالسلك السياسي العالمي، ارتباط وطيد.
So I found that Palestine is you cannot disconnect Palestine from the international scene politically and culturally.
جدار الفصل العنصري في بيت لحم من أكبر المظاهر العنصرية اللي وجدها الاحتلال الظاهرة للعين.
The apartheid separation wall, or as we call it in Palestine, the confiscation and expansion apartheid wall, is one of the most visible features of apartheid and racism that we could see in Palestine.
من الأشياء اللي استقطبت اللي هو سكان العالم إنهم يزوروا فلسطين وبالأخص مدينة بيت لحم والطواف حول جدار الفصل.
One of the most attractive attractions to the visitors of Palestine from all around the world, citizens, they would come and they would walk around the wall as if it was a holy site, just to realize, to understand, and to see the amount of art placed on there, and to read all of these humanitarian and political messages.
الشيء اللي خلى أو جعل الفنانين بأنهم يتركوا بصماتهم، فنانين من حول العالم يتركوا بصماتهم على هذا الجدار بكثير من الأعمال الفنية والجرافيتي والكتابات السياسية والتضامنية مع فلسطين وغيرها.
Which led a lot of artists, countless artists from all around the world to come and leave their fingerprint on this ugly wall to deliver a message and to show their support and to help relating and sending the message to the world with every visitor that comes to Palestine and with every camera that takes pictures and shots of the wall.
في الوقت الذي كان فيه الفنانون الفلسطينيون يمتنعون من الاقتراب من الجدار ولمسه أو حتى الرسم عليه أو كتابة أي شيء.
At the same time, the Palestinian artists were generally taking a stand away from the wall, not touching it, not painting on it, and not wanting to have any connection to it or any relation to it.
ذهبت أنا وبدأت بالرسم عليه واستغللته، يعني اقتنصت الفرصة بوجود السواح أو الوافدين إلى فلسطين، وبدأت بالرسم ونشر وإيصال أفكار ورسائل معينة وطبعها ورسمها على الجدار، وكانت هذه طريقة سريعة جدا بانتشار رسوماتي يعني حول العالم، وطريقة سهلة لإيصال الفكرة يعني بسرعة إلى العالم.
I personally saw the wall from a different angle. Once I saw the wall and I saw the people coming to see the art in it, I thought to myself, well, you know what? This could be one of the most useful locations for us Palestinians to send our art worldwide and to tell our story. Why not using it? And since then, I started painting and making my art and graffiti on the wall, spreading it worldwide to all of the world, and telling our story as Palestinians.
فبدأت برسم رزان النجار. رسمت أليس في بلاد العجائب وسميتها فلسطينيون في بلاد العجائب. رسمت سوبر ماريو أو لعبة ماريو.
I started my art on the wall with three different pieces of art. The first piece I did was Razan Najjar, which is the same girl my colleague Malak spoke about, which was a Palestinian nurse, 17 years old, which was shot by a sniper from her back. The second piece I did, I imagined Palestinians as Alice in Wonderland. So I made Alice in Wonderland, but I titled it with Palestinians in Wonderland, where the Palestinians were too big for the checkpoints. And in order to get as small as the checkpoints, they needed to have the magic candy, which is in our case, the permit that they used to they needed to pass through these checkpoints, and the checkpoints were around the wall, so people would want to go through this wall. I also painted Super Mario, which is a game that we grew up on. Super Mario is a game that we grew up on, realizing that we could pass all of the obstacles. On my own Super Mario, the obstacles were Israeli soldiers, checkpoints, and walls and Israeli military towers.
بعد فترة مات جورج فلويد.
A while later, George Floyd passed away.
في هذه المنطقة تحديدا، في اللوحة التي قبل هذه.
Right in the place of this piece, exactly where I made this piece of art of George Floyd.
تسمى قبة راحيل. شعرت بأن علي أن أنطق بشعوري وأصنع شيئا للعالم، وخصوصا لجورج فلويد أو للإنسانية التي انتهكت على أرض ما يسمى بأرض العدالة أمريكا. فوضعت رسمة جورج فلويد على أشهر مظاهر العنصرية الموجودة عندنا في فلسطين.
I realized my responsibility to relate to what happened to George Floyd, and I realized that when such a terrible action happens on the land of democracy of the world, the US, I realized how bad and how racist and how ugly that act was. So I chose to put the picture of George Floyd on the most obvious racist wall in the world to show the connection between the racism in the land of democracy in the US and the racism in the land of what claims to be the only democracy in the Middle East.
أثناء الرسم على الجدار كانت هناك المشاعر مختلفة، ليست كمشاعر من يرسم بطريقة اللي هي يعني جميلة أو مزاج جميل كانت جدا مخيفة. بدأت بالرسم بعد منتصف الليل. شعرت بأنني يعني أصنع شيئا مخيفا أو شيئا ممنوعا. سمعوني اللي هم يعني جنود الاحتلال من البرج، صاروا اللي هم يحكوا مع بعض إنه في حدا عم يرسم على الجدار، وصاروا بدهم يلفوا ويجوا عندي أو يشوفوا في حدا عم يرسم على الجدار وفي كذا كذا، فصاروا اللي هم بدهم يجوا مشان اللي هو يعني يعتقلوني. فأنا أسرعت في الرسم كثير كثير كثير، فرسمتها وخلصتها. طبعا بعد ما أنا كتبت اللي هو I can't breathe، يعني إنه I want يعني justice not O2. هي كانت اللي هي المعادلة هاي تبعتي اللي هي جورج فلويد عمليا مات مش من نقص الأكسجين، مع إنه نطقها، هو مات من نقص العدالة اللي موجودة في أمريكا.
So basically, Taqi here is describing his very mixed, complicated emotions when he was painting this particular piece of art. He started painting this piece of art after the midnight, and it was so scary for him to do that because the Israeli soldiers realized that there is a Palestinian or there is a guy painting on the wall. And just to let you know what measurements these are. This is about 5 meters high piece of art, and it's huge, it's massive, and it takes a lot of time. He realized that there are Israeli soldiers planning to get over the wall and come to arrest him. So he was painting with a lot of fear, trying to finish this piece of art before the Israeli soldiers come to him afterwards. Okay, so basically, he was so confused. He ran away. He left the area several times before he came back and continued it. And when he continued, it was already night. So basically, what happened is that he realized that when George Floyd died, he didn't die out of lack of oxygen, but basically out of lack of justice.
طبعا وبعد فترة وجيزة استشهد إياد الحلاق على مداخل القدس بطلقات جنود الاحتلال.
A short while after that, Iyad al-Hallaq was shot and killed in Jerusalem, on the gates of Jerusalem.
لا تختلف طريقة القتل، ربما اختلف الأسلوب، لكن بذور الحقد يعني موجودة. نفس العنصرية ليست يعني في نظري هي ليست ضد السود أو بين البيض والسود أو ما شابه ذلك. هي بذرة تزرع عند الإنسان السيء نيجي نقول يعني. فالأفعال هذه بتنتج عن هذا الإنسان، فبروح مثل اللي هو إياد الحلاق، وبروح مثل جورج فلويد، وبروح مثل أحمد عريقات، وبروح كثير اللي هو شهداء قتلوا يعني ميدانيا، أعدموا ميدانيا بدون سبب، بس كونه فلسطيني فهذا كفيل في إنه يعني يعني يهدر دمه
أو أسود.
أو أسود، يعني إنه أنت كونك أسود ممكن تموت بأي لحظة، أو إنه سهل تموت، وبالمقابل إنك تكون فلسطيني كمان اللي هو في أي لحظة أنت مرشح تموت.
Although the tool of execution was different in both cases, Taqi believes that the motivation was the same. It was racism in both cases. The moment you are a Palestinian here in Palestine in front of Israeli soldiers, you're always a target and you're always a suspect of doing something. And that's why he believes, in me too, actually. I do also believe that if you're black, African American black in the US, in front of American police, which is, by the way, trained by the Israeli soldiers, You could see the same reactions, the same dealing with cases and situations, the same way of talking to people, the same way of pushing people to the wall, the same way of insulting and humiliating the people. You could see the connection very, very clear between the two main powers, American police and Israeli military, towards or against both Palestinian, just because he's obvious looking Palestinian, without him doing or posing any threat to anything or to anybody. He was shot and killed. And Floyd, just for the sole case or sole reason of him being black, he was automatically supposed to be a threat and supposed to be a criminal and supposed to be basically somebody who has to be put down.
فموضوع العدالة أو عدم أو افتقار العدالة في أرض معينة، فهناك دائما حروب، هناك دائما دمار، هناك دائما ضحايا كثار. فعدم وجود العدالة يعني عدم وجود السلام. أنا لست ضد السلام، لا يوجد أحد من أرض السلام سميت بأرض السلام أو مدينة السلام، لكن عدم وجود العدالة في هذه الأرض فيعني نستبعد السلام أبدا.
Taqi is also saying that in his opinion, the lack of justice is automatically the lack of peace. There's not going to be any peace in the land of peace as we know it, Palestine, Israel area. There's not going to be any peace if there's not going to be any justice. If justice is made, it's going to be a cause of peace, basically, automatically.
ففي لوحة عندهم بالمعرض اللي هي بتحكي The Unexpected Visitor.
There's another piece of art called The Unexpected Visitor at the museum. Yes, this one.
في هذه اللوحة اللي هي بتحكي الزائر الغير متوقع، البوابة المشهورة طبعا في مدينة بيت لحم، هنا يعني قبر اللي هو راحيل. من هذه البوابة عند كل مرة بتشتعل فيها المواجهات أو المظاهرات، من هذه البوابة بتطلع اللي هي دبابة أو جنود احتلال أو قاذفة قنابل الغاز المسيل للدموع والرصاص المطاطي ومرش المياه العادمة على الناس ويعني انقضاض المظاهرات من هذه البوابة بالذات. من هذه البوابة لا يدخل سوى يعني اللي أنا ذكرتهم. فأنا بشوف إنه هل في يوم من الأيام هاي البوابة اللي ما بيفوت منها إلا الإشي البشع والمدمر راح يفوت اللي هو صانع السلام. اللوحة هاي هي ترجم.
Okay, so basically, just to let you know, this is a very real image. This is like a painting he made, but this is what the entrance of Bethlehem look like today. Okay, it looks like that exactly, although that this street was the main street that connects Jerusalem to Bethlehem. We used to call it Jerusalem Street, now it's called Jerusalem Bethlehem Hebron Street. Now it's called only Hebron Street because Jerusalem was cut off Bethlehem by this wall. Now, this exact gate is the gate where Israeli soldiers, Israeli tanks, snipers, and military comes every time whenever there is a protest or a demonstration. They come out from or through this gate to shoot in and to put down any Palestinian protests and any Palestinian call for justice and freedom. So he painted this piece of art, hoping that at one point that this gate will open and an unexpected visitor would come, a peacemaker.
اللوحة محاكاة للوحة رسمت في 1800 وما بعرف قديش من فنان روسي. كان يحكي عن القادم أو الزائر الغير متوقع. بيحكي عن المعتقل اللي كانوا يودوه على سجن سيبيريا في صحراء سيبيريا. انه لما كان يعود من السجن انه نهائيا ما كانوا هل يفرحوا او يستغربوا او يعجبوا من خروج هذا الشخص من هذاك السجن، انه حي، انه كان يستحال في انه يطلع هذا الشخص. فاحنا انا كفلسطيني كفنان فلسطيني بشوف انه مستحيل يكون في هناك صانع سلام يمر من هذه البوابه في يوم من الايام، لكن على امل. واللون الموجود خلف البوابه مش عارف هو نار ولا نور.
So basically, this painting that he made is basically a painting that Taqi is remembering through it another piece of art that was made by a Russian artist in the 19th century. It also carried the same title, The Unexpected Visitor, or The Unexpected Guest, which that artist, he doesn't remember the name of the artist, but that artist was talking about the Siberian prison where the Russian Soviet regime was sending all of his like the opposition and the people that carried any other different opinion about life and situation and politics in the Soviet Union at that time. So at that time, nobody expected anybody to come back from that prison, and that's why unfortunately, not only Taqi, but I would say most Palestinians would never expect any unexpected guest or unexpected visitor to come through this gate. But still, there is some hope, although that hope is very complicated, because if you look through the gate, you see that this gate has a very strange color. It could be light and it could be fire.
Thank you. That is so moving. And now we will transition to Q&A. And so at this time, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. We'll also have opportunities if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask Malik or Taki in person. We have about 10, maybe 12 minutes. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. Our first question comes from Amber. She asks, can Malik talk about doing art in Gaza? What are the challenges she faced producing her art and getting her art outside of Gaza?
Thank you, Amber, for the question. I'll start by saying that the most challenge was not feeling safe. Although like Gaza is a war zone, but you expect to be bombed anytime, like even when you're sleeping, like living. So it was very hard not feeling safe while painting. The other challenge, the electricity. So we had 3 to 4 hours of electricity every day. Sometimes we would have 24 hours without any electricity. So I really was dependent on finding alternatives to painting, which was candles, some small lights. So of course that really influenced my eyesight badly. Getting my art outside of Gaza was very difficult. Getting out of Gaza was difficult. So I had many exhibitions, over 10 exhibitions, and my visa was canceled most of the time. Also, like living and painting in a place like Gaza was pretty difficult. I fell in depression so many times after the war, dealing with the symptoms of complex PTSD, living in like you see, everyone is stressed, everyone is reacting differently from before war. So for me, the post-war is as bad as the war itself, and I'm not exaggerating by that. So I would say it was really challenging, but I was very, very productive because art was almost my only way of expressing myself and expressing the struggles that we go through as Palestinians.
Thank you. We have a comment from Ebi where he talks about it's quite different for us living in North America and not living under and oppressed by the occupation. And I'm thinking about in this in the 21st century, in this point in time, without Instagram, without Facebook, how much more difficult it would be to get your artwork out into the world.
I just remembered one thing, that we did not have all the art material that we wanted. So the art material was really limited as well. Like there comes a time where Israel was not allowing any canvas to get into the Gaza Strip. So I had to use papers and other materials to paint. And also getting stuff outside of Gaza, shipping them was also challenging because all artwork gets checked by like by the Israeli shipment facility. So like the UPS that I was shipping it through was telling me to not paint anything political, otherwise it will not be sent. So there was no freedom in this aspect.
It's interesting. We've been talking about art as protest, and just the act of being an artist is also perhaps a form of protest. Taki, I'm reminded of your comments about climbing the ladder, 5 meters high to in the middle of the night to paint and to put your artwork out, and the how scary it was to have the Israeli officers kind of bearing down upon you. And do you want to speak a little bit more about maybe the kind of like what Malik was saying, talk about the maybe the challenges of being an artist in the West Bank, be it getting materials or just actually the act of painting?
هي بتسألك عن يعني الحدث نفسه، شو العلاقة بين العمل الفني في غزة والعمل الفني في الضفة، إنه هل كمان في مشكلة في الوصول للمواد ولا كيف، ولا شو الخوف وين بيجي؟
يعني أنا في نظري بشوف إنه تكون فنان في فلسطين هو أمر يعني ليس بالسهل. إن كان في الضفة أو في فلسطين في أشياء كثير مختلفة. هون فيك يعني موضوع المواد والموضوع الأمور السياسية، أو إنه أنت كيف في عندك فكرة وفي عندك حرية إبداء الرأي أو حرية إنتاج العمل الفني تقريبا محدودة. هون ممكن يتم اللي هي تغطيتها إعلاميا، ممكن يتم اللي هو تهميشها، ممكن تساوي العمل الفني، ممكن ما حدا يقبه فيه، ممكن إذا كان اللي هو تحت سياقات سياسية ممكن يطلع، ممكن ما يطلع.
So basically, Taki is saying that although that we have a lot of obstacles in the West Bank, just like in Gaza, the obstacles are still a bit different because it usually is in the style of the art and how people and how media deals with the art you create. In many cases, just because of the topic of the art, just like what happened with Malak, because of the topic of the art, you find either people to support you or actually people to fight against you and to put you down for your art topic, and just because they don't want to publicize the actual story and to publicize the actual message that comes out of Palestine. In it's kind of a faking piece by basically not showing the struggle made in art.
Interesting. Someone, Ebi, just to round out this topic, wants to know if Malik or Taki, if either of you have ever had any direct altercations or incidences with the authorities.
Again, sorry.
Abby is interested if Taki or you, Malik, have ever had any direct altercations or direct experiences with maybe Israeli officers or customs or border
عمرك
officers.
كان عندك يعني خبرة
طبعاً.
معينة مع الجيش؟
انه كان في اللي هو امور اللي هي بتتعلق علب السبراي بينت، انه السبراي بينت كانت هي واحدة من
الأشياء اللي بنطرح عليها الواحد.
اللي يعني قطعة
مم.
سلاح كانت تعد في الانتفاضة الأولى وما زالت، لأنها كانت القلم الصارخ أو الفيسبوك، يعني السوشيال ميديا تاعت في الانتفاضة الأولى كانت اللي علبة سبراي.
صحيح.
فما زالت. فأنا مرة اللي هو شافوا معي اللي هو عدد كبير من السبراي في سيارتي، فإنه أنا كأنه يعني بحوزتي يعني هو سلاح.
So just to let you know, a small briefing about the Palestinian graffiti art in Palestine. In the first Intifada in 1987 till 1993, a spray paint can was considered to be a gun. Okay, so if the Israeli soldiers at that time saw or found a spray paint can with you, or either carrying it or hiding it or in your car or anything, you either get shot or you get arrested for that. Okay, and it's still the same. So he remembers one of the cases that the Israeli soldiers by chance stopped his car and they found like tens of spray paint cans. All of them are half full. So he was dealt with as a criminal smuggling guns, basically, or something like that, you know?
Well, I had a small thing. Of course, it's not as scary as a Taki experience, but I had once a group exhibition with Palestinian women from different places in Palestine to exhibit our work in Jerusalem. I was denied entry to Jerusalem without any reason when I applied to my permission through the American embassy. And the other time I went there, one of the Israeli officer in the checkpoint almost damaged some of my art pieces. They were framed, and how she handled with the suitcase with me, not only me, but with other passengers from Gaza to Jerusalem, it was pretty aggressive. And unfortunately, I had to lose some of the art pieces because of that. But I never really had this kind of interaction apart from the checkpoints.
Thank you both for sharing kind of some harrowing stories.
Can I add one point? Actually, if you ask this question almost to any Palestinian randomly, just pick anybody, he can talk about this for a couple of hours at least, from just personal experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this as a poet. You know, I'm a poet. I write poems, and I remember in the second Intifada, my mother had all of the poems I had, because of course a kid being like living in the Intifada, all of my poems were political, and a political poem could take you to jail. Okay, so basically my mother took all of my poems and lit them in fire when the Israeli soldiers were knocking the door of our neighbors in the same building. So it's something that every Palestinian, just any ordinary Palestinian, we have countless of experiences from such.
Wow. Well, thank you again for you both for sharing those stories. I know we have 2 minutes left before 1 o'clock. If you'll both bear with us, I'd like to squeeze in 1 to 2 more questions and then close out the session. We have a question from Abigail about your interactions, possibly with Black or African American artists in this moment. Do either of you, after you created your artwork, have you had any interactions or built any relationships with maybe other Black artists or activists in your shared spaces?
بس أمريكي هو.
لا هو عايش في لندن يعني.
Okay. Not African American, but British African.
Hmm.
He has a relation with an artist from the UK. He's originally from Nigeria. His name is Yummy.
هو كان يحكي لي الكلمة اللي هي عش طويلا يرتقي بالنيجيري اسمها كوبالايه.
So he always wished him to live long, but in Nigerian language. What was it called?
كوبالايه.
Kopelaye. He was always wishing him in Nigerian language. Kopalaye. I don't know what word. Kopalaye.
Yes.
How about you, Malik?
And I think he's
Well, I'm really
working
looking to get to meet an African American for a potential art project that would really speak about our mutual struggle from different places. So it's something that I have in mind, which I really love to work on.
No, well, we hope the maybe intersections can help out and facilitate these relationships. The last question I have for both of you, we've had a few people ask this, is if where can people purchase your artwork?
What is it?
Where can people, if they want to buy your artwork, so where can people go to
يعني ممكن يشتروا
see?
من عن
تواصلوا معك على
الانستغرام مباشرة
They can contact Taqi on his Instagram
أو فيسبوك.
or Facebook. Both leads directly to him, and I volunteer to translate any messages if needed in deal.
Yeah.
No worries.
Well, thank you.
So for me, people can follow me on Instagram, Malak Matar. People can also follow me on Facebook. If you want to buy signed art reproduction, you can visit my Etsy account, Malak Artist Store. And you can also reach me through email. I'm going to write it down. So you can email me anytime.
تقدر تحط انت كمان
وين؟
هون على الشات تقدر تحط المعلومات تبعتك.
You can also always contact the museum, and we'll be more than happy to get you in touch with Malak or Taki, or quite frankly, any of our wonderful artists in the exhibit.
Sure.
And so with that, I want to thank Malak and Taki and Salah for your time today and sharing your art and your experiences with all of us. Before we go, I'd briefly like to hand the mic over to Amber, who is not only a volunteer with the museum, but a new Resilience Monthly Club member. We're all volunteers. We're not getting paid for this. And so Amber's going to talk a little bit about how you can support the museum if you are so moved.
Yeah, thanks, Abby. And thank you so much to Taki and Malak. It's always so nice to have you guys. And I know this exhibit is really special. We posted the link to the tour online or on the chat box. So feel free to go visit the tour yourself. You can navigate to see all of the artists there. And as Abby mentioned, I'm a volunteer at the museum. I've been volunteering at the museum since August of last year, but I also just recently joined as a Resilience Monthly Club member. So I give $19 a month to the museum in order to sustain our efforts to create new exhibits like this. This is a really innovative exhibit, and it was only possible through the Resilience Monthly Club member donations and then individual donations that people give. We've been very, very heavily hit by COVID, as many other small organizations have. So any support you can give is really helpful. As Abby mentioned, we're a small operation. So Bashara Nazar, who started the museum, is our only full-time paid staff member, and everything else is volunteer run. And Abby and all of the other volunteers on the call can speak to the experience of being in the museum when you have Palestinians and non-Palestinians coming in and growing closer to their own heritage, their own culture. I've been in the museum when a group of women was FaceTiming their teta back in Ramallah over FaceTime for about 2 hours, just going through every single piece in the museum. And I've also given someone a tour of the museum who asked when they walked in, well, where is Palestine? So we have all kinds of people who come into the space, who enjoy the space. And so we really, in order to keep that museum and to keep doing these sorts of virtual events, we really need your help. So we do have the Resilience Monthly Club membership. That's $19 a month. And then there's other ways to sustain the museum by liking us on Facebook, by sharing our Instagram posts and doing those sorts of things to help promote and grow the museum.
All right, well, thank you, Amber, and thank you again to Malik and Taki for joining us today and sharing again your artwork, your creative processes, your experiences, and again, thank you to all of our attendees. Again, whether you're in DC or around the world, we hope to have some more art exhibit events throughout the month of October and into November as well. So keep an eye out for those. And other than that, have a great weekend and see you next time.